And we are live. Hey, everybody, this is Andy Hall. With me is Dan Arel. And you may ask me, who is Dan Arel? Well, I did some really thorough research right here on danarel.com. And I'm going to read you his bio. Dan Arel is an author, journalist, and privacy consultant. He maintains the site ThinkPrivacy and has had his work featured on OpenSource, Hackernoon Time, Huffington Post, and more. In 2018, Dan launched ThinkPrivacy in order to help everyday internet users have an easy-to-use, understand resource for choosing privacy and ethically focused apps and services. I'm intrigued about that. We'll talk about ethically focused apps later on. In 2019, Dan launched a new website for ThinkPrivacy and started a consulting wing for the project to help organizations take privacy more seriously, find solutions that work for them, and guide privacy-focused organizations in how to teach the privacy community as a whole. Dan Arel, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great, Andy. How are you?
I'm doing well. I just came off another show talking about politics and the world that we currently live in. I saw that you are engaged. We've known each other for a number of years at this point. And I know that you're involved with the privacy community, and with the world burning, with the country burning at the very least, I thought it'd be great to have you on to talk about internet privacy.
Yeah, I think what kind of sparked our conversation about it was I've been trying to reach out to activists that are out on the street and make sure that they're protecting themselves and others, because you could also be giving up information on other people who are out protesting without even realizing it. And so I wanted to start talking about that, and you asked me to come on. I thought that was the perfect time, because right now is we're gearing up for what's going to end up being our second, we're in a week-long protest, but I think the weekends we're going to see the size of them ramp up again. You'll see the people online streaming. You'll see people posting about it. And I want those people to be as safe as they can, because we don't want the wrong people to get the wrong information.
Right. So what kind of challenges do protesters face in terms of being on the internet and privacy?
So for a lot, it can be the organizers. They may want to change a location last minute or decide we need to move we're not going to turn down this street. We're going to turn down the next one. And it might be because they've had some people up ahead and they said, hey, it's blocked, or there's, especially now, it's the white nationalists are turning out. So it could be, hey, there's some people up ahead that look like they could be trying to cause trouble. We're going to turn before we get there. Or it could be, look, the cops have a barricade set up. They're waiting for us, and we want to turn before that, or we don't want to have a confrontation with this march. And if you're texting via plain text or like on your iMessage, it's much easier to be intercepted. And the cops and agents have this technology where they can spoof cell phone towers, and they can see the messages coming in and out. So they can get ahead of, oh, we're turning here. Now we're going to change this. And that's because they're DMing each other on Instagram, or they're using these plain text methods that aren't secure. They're not encrypted. And that causes a huge issue. Or if you're somebody, you might not even know that the federal government's already got their eye on you, or they know you're engaged in organizing this protest. They're just going to track your phone. Yeah. And so they don't have to read your messages to know where you're going if they can just follow your phone itself. And you'd be surprised how accurate they can get with GPS on that.
I'm going to ask you a stupid question.
Go for it.
What kind of privacy protections do we have as private citizens against the police doing that kind of stuff?
At face value, none. None, except there are things you can do to give yourself that protection. So one thing we talk about a lot, and you may have heard it, even dating back to like Edward Snowden's first, rise to fame with him, is this app called Signal. And it's, I think most people know what WhatsApp is, which is owned by Facebook, which is like it is an encrypted group chat, but of course it's owned by a multinational corporation that tracks your every move. Signal is an app that is end-to-end encrypted. So if I send you a message, for it to get to your phone, it's first encrypted with an encryption key, sent via the internet to your phone, and your phone's key will decrypt it because I've said I'm sending it to this phone. And so it knows. So if it goes to the wrong phone, it won't be decrypted. It will just be a jumbled mess. If it's intercepted via so if I hit send and the federal agents intercept that message halfway in between, they can't read it. It's an encrypted file. They're just going to see a bunch of random numbers and letters. They would have to actually have your encryption key to get it, which means they'd have to actually have access to your phone.
Sure.
Which cuts down on the chance that they're going to have that, because unless they've compromised you and your phone, then you have it. So, and there's steps you can take to ensure they can't do that as well. But that's one of the biggest first things I tell every single activist to put on their phone is you have to have the Signal. So yeah, I don't recommend WhatsApp just because it's owned by Facebook.
Okay,
and,
right.
You don't want, like, they say they can't read your messages, but it's Facebook. Can we trust them?
Sure. Right.
Where Signal, on the other hand, is a nonprofit company, but also they're open source, which means that activists that know about code and writing can go and verify that the application that they're using is doing what it says. There's no backdoor. There's no way in for federal agents. You can verify that. So it's a trusted app in that sense.
So I'm going to ask you I'm just going to ask you a whole bunch of naive questions, Dan. That's all this is going to be. Gosh, Dan, why is this the first time I've heard about Signal?
So I'm alarmed that so many people have asked me that in the last even couple of days, because it's been, like I said, Edward Snowden was one of the first people to come out and say you should use Signal for everything. But I think because it is a small nonprofit, it's not like they're advertising in the way WhatsApp is. It's not. It doesn't have that big company or corporate money behind it to push out this, hey, everyone should know about this. It's one of those, more of a word of mouth app, where if you're looking for a secure messenger, you're going to come across WhatsApp, Signal, Telegram's another one that's very popular, but it's not encrypted by default. So a lot of people might download it and think they're sending encrypted messages when they're not. Where there's no, with Signal on Android, you can go through a few steps to turn off encryption so you can send to anybody. But on the iPhone, for the most part, any time you're texting somebody on Signal, it is end-to-end encrypted. You can't turn it off. You can't accidentally not have it. And so it adds that extra layer of security. But you just haven't heard of it because they don't have that kind of money to budget. So unless someone's told you, oh, hey, do you have Signal? You should download it. You're probably not downloading it.
So if there was just one takeaway from our conversation, it would be us metaphorically taking people by the collar, shaking them and say, you should be using this service if you value your privacy.
Yeah. And I mean, if you can go beyond, protests, like, it's a good app to use all the time, because a lot of people don't want that whole, like, oh, I've been texting about this and now it's my ad on Facebook. Like, that's a weird invasion of someone's privacy. But also, it really is easy to hijack a text message. It doesn't take sophisticated equipment. So you'll see it happen a lot, where people will want to have two-factor authentication. When you sign into an app and it asks you for a 6-digit code, sometimes people have that texted to them. You can actually have that caught in between. So I'm logging into my email account. They figured out my password. So let's say they have my email and password, but they need that two-factor authentication. If I have that texted to me via plain text, they can intercept that.
Sure.
If anyone's seen that show, Mr. Robot, they've demonstrated how that can be done. It's fairly easy. So you just have to have a little bit of knowledge on how to run the application, and it can be done. But now that if you're on Signal, these messages can't be interrupted. And so you're now, even if we're just talking about our favorite cookie recipe, that's our business. No one else is privy to that information. It's a private conversation. And in this way, your conversation remains private.
Interesting. How do I keep my phone from being tracked?
The first thing you can do, so if you're going to a protest, think about maybe not taking your phone first.
Interesting. All right, yeah.
But I understand for some people that's very scary, because what happens if you get lost from your group? What happens if you run off, someone takes you, anything happens and you want a device, you're going to want one. Turn off location services. So, like on an iPhone, you just go into your settings, location services, off. Another thing I do a lot on there is I activate a VPN. So, I turn on so now my location services are off, GPS is off, and now I've switched my IP address to look like I'm in Europe. So
Dan, for those of us who may not know exactly what a VPN is, I have a vague idea what a VPN is from, basically the context clues of what you just said, but also some basic knowledge I have. But for those people tuning in here, a VPN is
a virtual private network. And so you basically, when you switch it on, this works on your computer, it works on your phone. People set it up on their smart TVs. It connects you to the internet via another server that's not in your home or in your city. You can pick one. I can pick one in LA if I want. I can also pick one in Germany or Australia. People use these all the time when they are, let's say they're huge BBC fans, but Netflix doesn't have UK shows in the US sometimes. The programming isn't always the same. So people will sign into a British VPN, and then they can watch. Their internet says, "Oh, you're in Britain. Here's the shows for Britain," and it's none the wiser. The same goes for, like, if I'm visiting websites. If I log in on an Israeli server and go to Google, I'm going to get an Israeli Google.
Right.
Yeah, that's where it thinks I am. And so that's a great way to, if you're using your phone on a protest, if you're looking up things online, trying to get quick information, it's not giving up your location because it thinks you're somewhere else. And so if they're trying to track your IP, they're just going to be like, okay, why is this protester in Germany doing XYZ? Like, it doesn't make sense to them. It throws them off. Right. And so you usually always, you don't have to go crazy. You don't have to put it in a different country. Different city works. Like, just anywhere that's not where you are. Gives you that added layer of security. A lot of people I know use VPNs 24 hours a day because they don't want their ISP tracking what they're doing. They don't want Google and other big corporations tracking everything they're doing. And this throws the whole thing off because now they don't even know where you are.
Interesting. It would make sense that there would be some kind of arms race against or governments, organizations trying to infiltrate these kind of private networks. Is that happening?
There is a bit. So there have been in cases in the past where VPNs have kind of rose to popularity, and then you realize that they're owned by the government.
Tell me about one of those situations, because I'm intrigued.
I can't, off the top of my head, it'll be a little harder, but I can't remember the name of it, but there was one that was, it looked cool. It said all the right things on their website, but when you went back to find out who owned it, it was a weird company with not a lot of history. And then as you trace back that, and the further people dug, it ended up kind of going to a shell corporation that tied back to like the CIA or the FBI or something. And so, they were putting up money. Facebook runs a VPN.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, they know what you're doing. The Opera browser, one of the alternative browsers. Sorry if there's people yelling in the background. There is Opera is an alternative browser, but it's owned by a Chinese corporation that is very well known for tracking internet users. And they have a VPN built into their technology, but it's tracking you. So you have to also know who you're using, which kind of goes back to what I said about Signal being open source, where you can view the code, see how it works. The best VPN companies out there are open source as well, where you can go verify the code. You can go look at it. You can say, oh, look, there's a backdoor plain as day here, or there's a bug. Maybe they don't even know there's a backdoor, and you can help fix it. In open source, you can contribute code. So if I say, oh, I just saw a flaw in your code, you can actually fix it and submit it to them, and they can say, wow, you fixed that. Thank you. Close it, and then push that to everybody else.
I've
But
heard that the privacy rules in Europe are different from here in America.
they are. They have the GDPR. Like I'm terrible at acronyms off the top of my head, but their data privacy laws are much more strict. What they can and can't track, how they can and can't sell it. The opt-in, opt-out of it is much more strict. So you have to, you fill out, I don't want to be tracked on this site, and they can't track you. They have to be very upfront with everything that they are doing. They're not perfect. California has one as well. But again, it's not, there's a lot of ways to take advantage of it. There's a lot of loopholes in it. A lot of lobbyists and corporations get their teeth into these laws and say, okay, we won't track you, but maybe we'll do this. And so, but one thing I've said, and I've written about this before, is laws are great, but they're not the be all end all, and laws change. So you might say, oh, I'm going to start using this app because I don't have to worry about it because the law is protecting me. And then a new government comes in after a couple of elections and they just change the law. And then all this information that companies had about you that they couldn't share before, they're free to share. And so I always tell people, use apps that are private by design and for ethical reasons, not because they're being forced to by the law. If they're being forced to, they can change their mind if the law changes. If it's an ethical reason that they're being private, and then you don't have to worry about it because that's their business model.
Sure. So what are the things that I should be afraid of that I have no idea about? Like I said, I have some basic ideas about being tracked. I go on Amazon. Should I be deathly afraid when I go on Amazon to buy stuff? I would say afraid is the wrong term. They know everything about you. When you buy something on Amazon and you go to Facebook, you're going to get ads for things that you were looking at there. When you go search on Google, the same thing's going to happen. These are all just corporations sharing data with each other. So a lot of people have the argument like, I have nothing to hide. So sure, maybe you are looking up just, vacuum cleaners and new books and nothing that's, making you like a target for the FBI, but they could be, it's still your private life. It's still your, like, what you search for is no one's business but yours. And these companies are all tracking you. So if you know that and you're okay with it, you have nothing to be afraid of. But what you are doing is building up a profile that they know about. One example I use a lot is there was a case of a divorce going on, and there was a custody battle involved. And the lawyer for the wife who wanted the kids in full-time custody actually got a subpoena for the husband's grocery card. So, when you go to the grocery store and they scan your card, and they tracked how much alcohol he bought and made him out to look like an alcoholic in the divorce hearing, and he didn't get custody of his kid. Now, by all intents and purposes, by looking at it, he was buying a regular amount of alcohol that adults tend to buy. But they were able to paint this picture of every time you go to the grocery store, you're buying alcohol. How can we trust you with kids? And who would have thought that that could be used against you? Who would think that getting that discount at the grocery store could hurt you later? Yeah.
But you got to think of it in that same way of when you're shopping at Amazon, it doesn't matter what you're buying. You're not buying anything illegal from Amazon. They're not selling you anything illegal. But you might be buying something that someone can use against you later. And you don't even think about it. So you can't trust this person because look at all of the, adult toys they buy. Look at what they're, and something like that, where it will paint this different picture of you that isn't you, but is only based on the snapshot of data. And they have all that information. And so it's more about being aware than it is being afraid. So then you have to make that decision. Do I want to use this product because they can do this? Or are there steps I can take to stop that? And like Amazon, no, your option is to not shop there.
Sure. A lot of people are doing these 23andMe kind of genetic services. Check things out, see if you have any lost relatives. And I know that the police have used, in some cases, those public resources, or I guess they're public resources. I don't know. What do you know about that?
So what I've seen is that the terms and conditions and privacy policies of 23andMe and Ancestry give them quite a lot of rights to use that data. Insurance companies can have access to it, and that kind of can vary state to state, country to country kind of thing. But I mean, imagine taking one of these and finding out you are predisposed to this horrible disease and you don't have it, but it's possible. And then you go to apply for insurance and they decline you or raise your rates because they found that in your DNA. Like they're like, wait, you're riskier because you actually are more likely to get this disease.
Right.
But like there have been, and people use this as a positive, but like there's been criminals who have been caught because a relative did a DNA test and they were able to paint the two things together. And sorry, I'm going to apologize for crying in the background now. This working from home life is a little different these days.
I imagine.
What we've and so there was a serial killer caught recently in, I want to say California, but I could be off on that. It was a couple years ago. But a relative somewhere else in the country took a DNA test. It matched the DNA that they had on file, and then they were able to trace it and figure out, okay, this makes sense that it could be this person. More investigation, and there you go. You've got your criminal. So, and I think a case like that does give like that's I mean, catching a serial killer isn't a bad thing.
Right, definitely.
But what's scary about it is that there are other ethical implications, like we talked about your insurance and things like that. Like, imagine if those became more open. Jobs maybe start turning you down because they're afraid you're going to get sick more, and that's too much sick time for them, so they don't want you. Like the snowball effect of privacy invasion is big. Sure,
definitely. If there are a lot of jobs that won't take you, or if you have a bad credit score, what's going to happen if they have your DNA on file?
Right.
Or even if it's just your dad's DNA or your mom's DNA or your brother's DNA, you may not even be doing it yourself.
Exactly. Like I've never done one, but my brother has. So there you go. You've got mine pretty much.
Yeah. Well, you've got, exactly. Yeah. That's, hey, how you doing, Daily Atheist? Daily Atheist. I was just coming off his show about, but he's in the chat right now. We were talking about politics and everything before coming on here. How's shifting gears just a little bit away from privacy for a second? How's the political scene where you are, Dan? Do you have protests going on?
Yeah. So protests are happening in my neighborhood. So the Saturday night is just all out chaos. Two banks were burned down a couple blocks from here. The local stores were smashed up pretty good, and it was huge. It was thousands and thousands of people, but with a very aggressive police force. They showed force, which turned the crowd. And I think if you've ever looked at studies about what happens when, the police escalate, well, then the crowd escalates, and then the police escalates above the crowd, and so on. But now today, just before I came on here, I took a drive down the street, and the whole downtown area looks like a military zone. It's National Guard and their armored vehicles driving around, walking around, carrying AR-15s, and that's the scene in my own neighborhood right now. In Southern California in general, it's protests every single day of the week, and they vary. I think for the most part this week they've been very subdued. I mean, a couple of arrests here and there, but for the most part they've just been protested and clog up a street for a little bit. But the weekend here was pretty rough. We had the ones here in my neighborhood, then there was ones in downtown in San Diego proper that were much more. They were huge. There was a lot of police encounters right off the bat. As soon as they got down there, rubber bullets and tear gas started flying, and that's sort of where it is here right now. And I think it's like I said, weekend's coming up, so it's probably going to ramp up a bit more.
When you look at, because I know you have kids, I mean, when you think about young people using the internet, because basically I have kids too. I have an 18-year-old and a 15-year-old. They're on it all the time. What's some basic common sense besides using Signal and maybe a VPN?
So one thing I actually use in my house is I use a different DNS propagator. So what that means is, and the one I use is called AdGuard. I think it's adguard.com. But on my router itself, if you go into the settings, you'll find an area that you can set the DNS address. And usually it's set to something either it's blank because you're just using the ISP, or it's set to like 8888, which is Google. And those are just common ones. But I use one that actually blocks ads at the router. So instead of having to use an ad blocker on my computer or the kids' laptops or whatever they're using, I have them blocked right there at point of entry.
I just want to say this again, just so that I understand it. You're saying by doing some kind of magic spell on my router, I can effectively block ads.
Yep. Now, I will say you won't block ads on like YouTube or Hulu because those are embedded. So they're not like, but like, you know, if you go on to like a Facebook or Google and they have like the ads on the side or like those are blocked out automatically. But let me just follow up. Is this information on your site ThinkPrivacy? Yes. So if you go to ThinkPrivacy, go to my recommendations and click on DNS, you can pick a service. And if you pick one like AdGuard, which is what I use, they have step-by-step instructions on how to set it, so that you don't have to know what you're doing. That's the site's built for people that don't have a clue. So if you think it's a magic spell, you can walk through it. But the extra step I take there is I have slightly younger kids, and on the iPad that they have, on that I install a DNS app, and I actually put a family. So it's from AdGuard as well, but it's a DNS address that is more family friendly. So it actually blocks malicious websites that you wouldn't want kids going to. And then you can set different levels. So this is going to get a little above most people, but like you can actually install like another computer in your house, connect it to your router, and you can install. AdGuard even has an app that you can install and run where I can say, no, YouTube is blocked, Instagram's blocked, Facebook is blocked, or I can set that those are blocked at night.
Oh.
Or those are blocked for these computers. And so let's say I want YouTube is fine on mine, but I don't want my kids on there. I can block it on their computer's address.
Right.
And so there's a lot you can do in the home to limit. So but it's also about just teaching your kids how to be safe online.
Yeah.
You know, like it's about it's the common sense things, and also being open with, hey, if you see something, hear something, or someone says something to you that makes you uncomfortable or you're worried about, come ask me. I will not be mad at you. I understand how the internet works. I understand that you might stumble into something that you didn't mean to stumble into. And but if you come let me know, I can help you either tell you that, no, actually, this is okay. You don't have to, like, this is something, or, oh, here's how we're going to stop that from happening again. And that trust needs to be there, though. When my son first started getting into watching YouTube videos of people playing video games, I took a great interest in who's he watching. What are the names of them? And I went and checked out their profiles. What kind of stuff are they doing? And then you start finding a lot of them are kid friendly. They're not swearing. They're not saying, using derogatory language. They're just making videos of them playing. And I just asked, I said, look, if you're watching one of these and you hear a bad word, and he knows what those words are,
yeah,
please change. And I've witnessed it happen, but because he's seen, like he's been watching one, because I hear like an F-bomb, and I watch him click stop, and he looks up, like he almost looks up like scared. And I'm like, oh, you're gonna switch videos? He goes, yeah. I was like, you're good. Like, he's gonna hear the words.
Yeah.
And he's gonna hear the words from me. Sure. But what I want him to have is that, like, understanding that, like, I'm gonna let you keep doing these things that make you happy and watch these videos and being, as long as you follow rules. And that's what, and as long as I can trust them to do that. If he breaks that trust, well, then he's going to start finding restrictions placed on the apps and things like that.
Yeah.
And as he gets older, we'll have to adjust to what those restrictions look like and what he's allowed to watch and not, because like I said, by 15, their language vocabulary in the bad words category is going to be a lot different.
Oh, yes, yes. I believe I've provided my children an education.
But yeah, I mean, but these are just basic, simple, like, I've got this ad, so I'm trying to block ads coming in, and you can also set it to block trackers. So there's not much of a profile being built on them, because I'm sort of making their information sort of static. They're not logging into a YouTube account to watch YouTube, and their IP address changes pretty regularly, and they're going through. So, it's one of those multi-tiered steps that you do it just to do the best you can.
Yeah. So if I have a VPN, I can use that on a public Wi-Fi, like I go into Starbucks, and does that protect me?
It does, because if you're on as you walk into Starbucks, you join a network, you're going to be on this network with all these other computers, and they can all see each other. If you're a Windows user and you go into like the networking, also like at the office, you'll see all these people's computers. On Mac, the same thing. Like you go into like the networking and you'll just see all the computers on the same network as you. People can run attacks on computers on the same network. That's how a lot of attacks happen. A VPN removes you from that. You are now invisible to the other people in that.
That's like a cloaking device.
Yeah. That's the great way to look at it. And also, like, if you're not as worried about like that kind of attack, or like you have a hardened computer system that people aren't going to get into, it's becoming less and less necessary, only because almost every website these days uses an HTTPS header. Mm-hmm. And so you notice when you go like to shop, you have that little lock. That's becoming the standard. And even sites that don't, like my site has a certificate that gives me that. I collect no payment information. I never ask for your number or your name. There's nothing to steal from it, but it's also nobody's business that you're on my website looking at privacy tools.
Right.
So I've kind of locked that down. But I always say, if you're on a public Wi-Fi, better safe than sorry, jump on the VPN. And I do every time. If I'm ever at an airport or at a conference, you're there at a hotel with the guests, conference goers, other speakers. You're just asking to have so many people give some. I just jump on a VPN and it's over.
Especially if you're a public figure, right? Like yourself. I mean, people know who you are, basically. I imagine you want to be pretty well protected.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I want. I use a computer like everybody else in the world does. I do, like, my personal finances. My life is on it, and but I also can be a target. More so. So it's taking those steps to eliminate being able to get that information. But it's also being smart about my data. If I've got tax information on my computer, where am I keeping it? How am I storing it? Is it like, how accessible is it? If I lost my computer, can someone get it? If I accidentally left my computer at a hotel and someone turned it on, are they going to get in by guessing my password? Are they going to unplug my hard drive and can they get into it? But it's a lot of security is common sense plus tools to make it easier.
That's good. And you can find, and I'll plug your site again, ThinkPrivacy.
Yeah, thinkprivacy.ch is honestly what it is. It's a collect. You go and it's broken up by category. So if you want to browse privately, click on the browser tab and learn about web browsers. You want to search and not have Google search. I know everything you're searching for. There's a place for that. Need a VPN recommendation? We've got those there, and everything that's on there, I've vetted myself. I've talked to the business owners of them. I've worked with people that know source code better than I do to make sure that these are good recommendations, that they're not just the run of the mill place. And I also don't do affiliates. So You go to
Oh,
a
yeah.
lot of, like if you go to like bestvpn.com, they're going to tell you every VPN that pays them to say that the best VPN is the best VPN. I don't do affiliate links. I don't make money off it. Like it would be easy to, but
Sure.
it hurts the credibility of the recommendation. I want that recommendation to come from, this is a quality product. I don't care if they have an affiliate program or not.
All right. Are burner phones a thing of the past?
Not for certain people. One thing we didn't touch on, and I'll use this really quick in burner phones, is threat modeling, and that's figuring out what you need for your privacy. So a lot of people I come across, they go from, oh, I didn't know about privacy to now I care about privacy. But when they go to I care about privacy, they go all the way from I didn't care to I'm Edward Snowden, and they make their lives hard. They pick tools that are hard to use. They pick tools that block things that aren't necessary to block in their life. And so what you have to do is look at your threat model. What am I trying to protect? What happens if what I'm trying to protect is leaked?
Yeah.
And for many people, that's like my bank account information. I don't want someone hacking my bank account and stealing my money. Yeah. And so you have to look at, okay, with that threat model, what tools make that easier? And that's, a VPN, a stronger password. Not your email password and your bank password should not be the same. And you shouldn't know either of them. I don't know a single one of my passwords.
Sure.
If you said what the password is, I cannot tell you.
Are they all randomly
it's a long random string of numbers, letters, and symbols. And they're stored on a password manager that manages my passwords for me. And so if you hack one account, I can change that one password. I don't have to go change 50 passwords.
Right.
So if you get my email address and my password, it only works for that one place. You're not going to get in anywhere else. And so with burner phones, it comes with your threat model. Are you actually being followed by somebody? Is someone tracking your phone all the time? Does it make sense for you to have one and get rid of it quickly? The answer for most people is no. I don't need it. There will be some people that do. There will be some activists, especially outside the US, where you'll have people who are political activists in countries where political activism is, punishable by death. Those threat models are different. And so you have to look at your threat model and be honest about it. Because I have come across people who are like, hey, your site looks really terrible. And I'm like, oh, I spent a lot of time designing it. And it's because they have so many blocking restrictions on their browser to stop all tracking. But it's actually, I don't track on my site. Every font, every image is hosted locally. So it's not somewhere else that can then track it, where a lot of websites use Google fonts. Well, Google now has a little information about what's happening. I use none of it.
Say that again for us Luddites. We're talking about just using a font on a site, and I go on that site. All of a sudden, Google knows some information about me.
Yes, because by going to that site's sending, hey, this IP address needs this font, and they grab that font and give it to you so that you can see it on your website. And now they know what website you're visiting. They don't even have a cookie on that site. They just know because there's a link back to their page. Facebook. How many sites do you go to that have like a like us on Facebook button?
Oh yeah,
or a little thing on the side that shows their Facebook feed.
Yep.
Now Facebook knows all about you. So it's those things can be blocked, but people go to such an extreme that they block everything, and then they're not even having an enjoyable internet experience. And the internet's a fantastic, wonderful place. It's got lots of valuable information. It can be terrible, but it can be awesome. And so you have to limit what steps am I taking to make my life harder, or what steps am I actually taking to stop a potential threat. And
I have my girlfriend's sister works for Apple. She works in their security division. She's always talking about how great Apple is in terms of being a, really caring about privacy. Is that really true, Dan?
Yeah.
Okay, please. Get me into trouble domestically, please.
So, relatively speaking, yes, they're better. So they have a reason to be better. So Google is known for their surveillance of people. And they're known for how much they know about you. And they use that to their advantage. That's their selling point almost. Like when you use Google, your searches are almost tailored to you.
Oh, definitely.
All the and that people like that. That helps. Like it does make their searches better. There's a reason why Google searches are like the top searches out there.
Sure.
Like very few companies can compete. But Apple doesn't have that model. That's not what they're selling. They're selling this product, this experience, which is like the iPhone or the Mac. And so they have some reason to give some level of privacy there because it gives them that leg up. Now they can say, look, you can have this Android or this iPhone, but the iPhone does not track this or that. And we don't allow apps to track you doing this and that. Like apps can't talk to each other in the same way like they can on a computer, on different computers or on Android. They're sandboxed, which means that each app operates individually.
Okay.
And so they're not, when you launch Facebook, it's not looking at information from another app you've used. It can't access that. But they're only private to a degree. They still know an awful lot about you. Yeah. They collect a ton of usage data, but also like your phone isn't, if you use a passcode on your phone's encrypted. So, and I'm sure you've seen the stories of like when they arrest like a mass shooter and they get to his phone and they can't open it. And Apple says, no, we're not going to help you.
Right.
It's an encrypted phone for a reason. That's not your device. But if you use iCloud and you back up all your data to the iCloud's not encrypted. So all the FBI has to do is really just go get your iCloud backup. They need a warrant and they can access that data. So while
they don't need a warrant.
Well, they should.
Floating out there.
Yeah. But it's on a cloud unencrypted.
Right,
and activists for a long time have been asking Apple to start encrypting iCloud backups because it's an extra layer of security. And honestly, it's probably one of those things that's how they appease law enforcement by not helping with phones, is if you go through the proper channels, Apple can give you the information.
Sounds like a devil's bargain right there.
Right. But like if you came to me today and said, hey, I'm buying a new phone, do I buy an Apple or an Android? And I know you're not a tech savvy person that I want to be your customer support for and help you. You can buy an Android phone. You can wipe all the Google stuff off it and install a third party operating system that's more private. That's a lot more work. Your everyday average user isn't going to go through that trouble or know how.
The important point for me is that you just volunteered in a way to be my IT person with my phone. That's what I just remember.
But when it comes to choosing between the two, I always point people towards iOS because it is at least at a very marginal level more secure. And so I feel like that's at least a slightly smarter choice.
Well, at least I know how to anger my my girlfriend's sister over Thanksgiving this upcoming year, assuming that we all get together.
Find out what they're waiting on for encrypting those iCloud backups, will you?
I will. I will do that. Write that down and underline it.
Report back, please. Because I mean, like I said, they have more reason to push privacy and to be private. Because if you promise something and then you break that promise, you lose customer trust.
Yeah, and Apple is based on trust, isn't it?
Right. And so they have a reason to at least do better than Google. But I would never say they do perfect because, like I said, they do collect a lot of info. They do, and they work with Google constantly. So, like the default search engine on Safari when you open it up is what? Google. So it's not perfect, but it's better.
So, Dan, we've been talking for about 45 minutes. I would be remiss if I had you on the channel without asking you things like, gosh, Dan, how do you think things are going to work out with the protesters and Trump? I don't want you to incriminate yourself in any way, but I was just wondering what your thoughts are in opening that up for a conversation.
I think we're in for a very long fight this time. we've seen protests like this in the past, but they've never felt quite like this. There were flashes in time where something terrible happened, but what we keep seeing is this something terrible keeps happening, and something about now has a different impact. And I think public opinion has now changed. There was just a poll the other day that asked people about burning down the precinct in Minnesota, and it was like 50%, nearly 50% we're fine with it, because that perception of what's happening has now changed. And I think we're in for a long fight, because I think what we're going to keep seeing is some police departments trying to pass reforms that appease the protesters, but we're going to see some, like in New York City, where they seem to be doubling down. No,
go ahead.
My own city hasn't had a protester in it since Saturday, and the National Guard's standing outside. Like, the show of force is more than we're used to nationwide. We saw a lot of this in Ferguson, but it didn't spread as widespread, and the show of force back wasn't as widespread. And it seems like the police and the government are really focused on escalating this, and I think that's going to be met with more escalation. I don't think people aren't going to cower away from it. They're tired of it, and I think we're in for it.
I don't think there's going to be real change unless people keep protesting.
Right. And we've seen little changes. We've seen things happen. We saw the officers in the George Floyd case had their charges. Like, the three others were picked up, and the first had his third moved to a second. That is a victory. We can't dismiss that just because we don't agree with the system that's doing it. Like, that is something that happened. In San Diego, they've put the use of the chokehold out. So up until, this time last year, the chief of police was saying, we have no problem with chokehold. It's a valuable tool. And now yesterday they were like, what? It's too far. We're done with it. And while we know that like New York did the same thing and then killed Eric Garner with it, we know that at least they're listening a little. But we want more than that. The goal is to push beyond police reform.
I totally agree on that. What I found remarkable about Obama's speech yesterday, and actually I went into this kind of conniption, and I've been talking about it, whatever show I've been on for the last 48 hours, I've been talking about this, is that there are 18,000 municipalities throughout the country, and somehow we've accepted as a fact that each one has some kind of dictatorial power about whether or not it uses chokeholds on the citizenry. And that just seems to be madness.
Yeah.
The idea that there isn't any kind of overarching rule that, no, you can't use chokeholds.
Right.
I just blow a gasket when I think about that. Like, why should I just go to the next town over and suddenly I'm more at risk from the police killing me because they happen to believe in chokeholds?
Right. You've got that, but also we've got police. So one thing we should mention is that police are also being asked to do things that are not what police should be doing. They are not mental health counselors.
Yeah.
Yet, instead of funneling money away from them into community services that help people having like mental health like episodes or traumas, is we give it to the police. Like, that's the wrong. Like, they show up, there's somebody with a knife or something that and they're not equipped to deal with that.
They are not, no.
And they shouldn't be doing it. And we could, I think it's in Dallas, they're running a pilot program where they are funneling money to community programs where they instead show up, and they've seen the cases drop because someone's going there that's trained to help and talk these people down and get them the care they need. And that's the only way forward.
Yeah.
So it is, people here defund the police and they get scared, like, wait, but we need them. And that's a different argument. But what we do know is that we can use that money better somewhere else. We can use that money for programs that help. Cops should not be the ones going to help homeless people.
Yeah.
We can do better with that money they're getting. And they're getting so much money to do it. Like, So it's not even about police reform, but it's about redirecting these funds and changing fundamentally what the police are and removing them from spaces they don't belong.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's great. That's a great way to end right there, Dan Arel. Dan, before we totally close, I feel like I should ask the question that I ask everybody that comes on for these extended conversations. So was there something you wanted to talk about that we didn't get to? Was there a question, not about plugs or anything like that, where people can find you online, but was there a topic you really wanted to delve into that we didn't get a chance to?
The only thing I didn't say, and I think I'd be remiss not to say it, is if you're at a protest and you bring your phone, don't post video that shows people's faces. I took great pains when I wanted to document what was happening, because that's something that I feel like I'm responsible to do, is I took video from behind as much as I possibly could, people walking away from me. And before I post anything, I watched it real quick. Right now it's a unique time because almost everyone's wearing a mask, just for health reasons. But I made sure, like, are they identifiable? What's happening? Can I make sure I'm posting something that is like, I don't know what this person's going to do later.
Yeah.
But I also don't want to be the one that helps incriminate them for anything, or it makes them think that they should be incriminated or tracked or followed. So just take that precaution. Like, you wouldn't want someone posting video of you that you thought could hurt you later or put you on a list later just because you went to a protest. And so, to me, that's one of those. That's one of those just basics. Like, treat video and that like you would want to be.
It's the golden rule of video. That's what that is.
Video at protests.
That's fantastic. Dan Arel, where can people find you online, sir?
Best place to find me, I would say, is on Twitter, which is @DanArel, which I don't know if my name thing shows up in the YouTube, but I put that down there. So @DanArel. And then you can find me at danarel.com. And from there, you'll actually just be linked to everything. So you can find my Twitter, all my websites, anything like that. ThinkPrivacy.ch. It's a great site to read up on what I'm working on. And that's the best place to get at me.
All right. So what I'm going to do is hit the end broadcast buttons. Hey, thanks everyone for coming on. JJ mentioned that even if the victim of chokehold doesn't die, they are still having brain cells killed. It's not good. Your brain needs oxygen.
It does.
It needs a lot of it. It's an oxygen hog. That's what that is, JJ. Jeez. What a world. What a world. Thanks, everyone, for coming on. I'm going to hit the magic button. And it is now